There comes a moment in every relationship with an avoidant where you feel the air turn heavy, the energy shift, the closeness you worked so hard for suddenly replaced with distance. You tell yourself, maybe it's just stress, maybe they need space, maybe if I love harder, softer, better, they'll come back to me. And for a while, you play that role, you shrink yourself, you silence your needs, you bend and bend until you're almost unrecognizable, all in the hope of holding on to the connection that feels like it's slipping through your fingers. But here's the truth. No one tells you in the beginning. Every time you overextend to keep an avoidant close, you're teaching them that love requires nothing of them, while it costs everything from you. Their silence becomes power. Their distance becomes a weapon. And your longing becomes the leash they hold without even asking for it. Have you ever noticed how their absence feels louder than their presence? How the nights you lie awake wondering what you did wrong carve deeper wounds than the moments they actually show up? That's because the avoidant thrives in the space of your doubt. They don't have to say a word. Their withdrawal becomes the story you tell yourself. I'm not enough. I have to chase. I can't lose them. But what if the real shift happens the moment you refuse to play that game? What if saying no to the avoidant, not in anger but in clarity, is the single most powerful move you'll ever make? Because here's what they never expect, that you will choose yourself. That you will stop begging, stop waiting, stop proving, and instead step into a silence of your own. Not silence as punishment, but silence as liberation. And when you do, something fascinating begins to happen. The very person who once made you feel small begins to feel your absence in a way they cannot control. They expect you to crawl back, but instead you rise. And in that rising, the dynamic changes forever. This isn't about making them suffer. It's about reclaiming the part of you that was never meant to be on your knees in the first place. It's about remembering that love is not meant to feel like starvation. The first shift you need to see is this. Distance is not depth. Too many of us confuse absence with mystery and mystery with worth. The avoidant pulls back and we feel the sting. Instead of recognizing their withdrawal as a wound, we interpret it as a challenge. If they're so hard to reach, they must be valuable. If their love feels scarce, it must be because it's rare. And we tell ourselves that if we can just unlock the key to their heart, we'll finally prove that we were worthy of the chase all along. But let's be brutally honest for a moment. What has their distance really given you? Has it deepened your intimacy, or has it deepened your anxiety? Has it inspired you to grow, or has it forced you to shrink? Has their silence ever filled you with safety, or has it left you pacing the floors at 2 a.m., replaying every word you said, wondering where you went wrong? Avoidants are masters of scarcity. They dole out affection in drops, not rivers, and you've been trained to sip from those drops like they are life itself. That is not love. That is survival mode. And survival mode is not the same as connection. Here's the paradox. The less they give, the more you chase. The more you chase, the more they pull back. And so the cycle spins, leaving you dizzy, depleted, and convinced that if you just hold on long enough, something will change. But nothing changes until you do. When you finally see their withdrawal for what it is, not mystery, not power, but avoidance, you break the trance. Because the truth is, their distance is not about your worth. It's about their fear. And you cannot heal someone's fear by abandoning yourself. So imagine for a moment flipping the script. Imagine that instead of leaning in when they pull away, you held your ground. Imagine that instead of proving your devotion, you let them sit in the silence they created. What would happen then? Wouldn't the dynamic shift? Wouldn't the power balance recalibrate? And here's where it gets interesting. Avoidants often expect your compliance, not your clarity. They're used to you making up the difference. They count on your hunger to keep them fed. So when you stop chasing, it's not just surprising, it's disarming. It forces them to see that love is not a one-way transaction, that your energy is not theirs to squander. The first shift then is this: stop mistaking their distance for depth. Distance is not depth. Scarcity is not value. And your worth is not measured by how well you endure starvation. The second shift is realizing that your no carries more power than their silence ever did. For so long, you've been trained to believe that silence is dominance, that the one who withholds is the one who wins. They pull away, and suddenly you're the one scrambling to repair what wasn't yours to fix. But what happens when the one who usually chases simply stops? Avoidants are addicted to control, not necessarily of you, but of their own inner world. They control their vulnerability by rationing closeness. They control their fears by keeping you at arm's length. And they control the relationship by creating a dance where you are always leaning in while they are always leaning back. But the moment you say no, not just in words, but in energy, in action, in choice, the choreography collapses. Think of it this way. When they withdraw, they expect you to panic. They expect the calls, the texts, the explanations, the desperate attempts to bridge the gap. They expect to see you waiting in the doorway of their absence. And for a long time, you've played that role. But when you no longer step into that role, when you simply let the silence be, you become the unpredictable one. You disrupt the pattern. And disruption is the one thing an avoidant never plans for. They're prepared for your neediness. They're prepared for your confusion, but they are not prepared for your clarity. When you say no, when you stop proving, when you stop begging, you shatter the illusion that they are the center of gravity. Suddenly, they're the one left wondering, have you ever thought about what it feels like on their side when the chase ends? When the constant reassurance they depended on vanishes? At first, they may scoff, act indifferent, pretend they never cared, but slowly something else creeps in. An avoidant who is no longer pursued begins to feel the very discomfort they've been running from. The discomfort of loss, of uncertainty, of realizing that you were the anchor all along. This is why your no is not rejection, it is revelation. It reveals to you your own strength, and it reveals to them their own emptiness. And here's the thing, when they finally come back, when they beg for your love, when they try to reclaim the dynamic you've broken, you must remember this is not your signal to return, because the point was never to get them to beg. The point was to free yourself from needing their begging to feel whole. If this is landing for you, subscribe. We're just getting started. The third shift is understanding that their begging is not proof of their change. It's proof of their panic. There's a difference. When you finally step back, when you stop feeding the cycle, the avoidant feels a void they didn't anticipate. They may come back with intensity, with promises, with words you've waited years to hear. And in that moment, it's tempting to believe that the breakthrough has finally happened, that this time will be different. But if you look closer, you'll see that what drives them back is not love reimagined, but control disrupted. Have you noticed how sudden their urgency becomes when they feel you slipping away? The same person who ignored your texts now floods your phone. The one who dismissed your feelings now insists that you've always meant everything to them. It feels intoxicating because it mirrors the love you've longed for. But here's the haunting truth. What they're craving in that moment is not intimacy, it's relief. Relief from the fear that they've lost their grip on you. This is the cycle. They withdraw, you chase, they return, you forgive, and each round carves the pattern deeper into your bones until you begin to confuse chaos with chemistry, inconsistency with passion, and pain with love. But when you finally say no, when you refuse to go back even after they come crawling, you interrupt not just the cycle between you and them, you interrupt the cycle inside yourself. Because here's the part no one wants to admit. It's not just them that's addicted to the dance. You've been too addicted to the highs and lows, to the hope and disappointment, to the thrill of finally being chosen even if it never lasts. Walking away isn't just saying no to them. It's saying no to the version of you that once believed scraps were enough. And that's where the deeper power lies. When you stop rewarding their panic with access, you teach yourself that you no longer need their crumbs to survive. You begin to rewrite the story. Their return doesn't mean they've changed. It means you have, because you finally see that you don't want to be begged for. You want to be chosen without condition. You want to be loved without retreat. You want a relationship that doesn't collapse every time intimacy knocks on the door. So when the avoidant begs, let them beg. Hear their words if you must, but don't confuse their fear of losing you with the ability to truly love you. Saying no in that moment is not cruelty. It's clarity. It's you standing in a truth so solid that their desperation can no longer shake you. The fourth shift is realizing that the real loss was never them, it was you. Somewhere in the push and pull of loving an avoidant, you abandoned pieces of yourself. You quieted your needs to keep the peace. You shrank your desires so they wouldn't feel smothered. You convinced yourself that patience was love when really it was self-betrayal. Avoidants don't just create distance in a relationship. They invite you to create distance from yourself. Over time, you begin to orbit around their moods, their rhythms, their availability. You start waiting for their signals before you allow yourself to feel secure, to feel wanted, to feel alive. Without realizing it, you make them the authority of your worth, and that is the deepest wound. But when you say no, truly fully with conviction, you're not just rejecting their return. You're retrieving the pieces of yourself that you left scattered in their shadow. You're reclaiming the parts of you that once compromised too quickly, forgave too easily, and settled too often. And this reclamation is not loud or angry. It is steady. It is the kind of strength that no longer needs proving because it knows its own weight. Think about it. What's really harder? Losing them or facing the silence where you're finally alone with yourself? For many, that silence feels unbearable at first because you've defined yourself for so long through their absence and return. But stay there. Stay in that silence. Because it is in that space that your own voice grows loud again. And when it does, you'll realize something liberating. They were never the home you were searching for. You were. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you come home to yourself, you stop attracting the kind of love that feeds on your abandonment. You no longer tolerate the crumbs because you are full from within. And when you meet someone new, someone capable of intimacy, someone who doesn't run when it gets real, you'll recognize them not because they beg for you, but because they stand beside you, steady and unshaken. So the fourth shift is this. The breakup is not the breaking of you. It is the breaking open of you. It's the moment you remember that the most important yes was never theirs to give. It was yours. The fifth shift is realizing that every ounce of energy you once poured into understanding them can now be invested into creating the life that calls to you. For so long, your mind has been occupied with questions that lead nowhere. Why did they leave? Why don't they love me the way I love them? What did I do wrong? What can I do to make them stay? These questions drain you because they have no real answer. They are designed to keep you stuck in reaction mode, chasing clarity from someone who thrives on confusion. But when you stop asking questions about them, you free yourself to ask questions about you. What do I truly want? What kind of love feels safe and expansive? What kind of life am I ready to create when I no longer settle for scraps? These questions don't drain you. They energize you. They open doors instead of closing them. They bring you back into creation, where your power has always been waiting. Here's what most people don't see. Avoidants keep you in a cycle where your identity becomes tethered to their behavior. If they text, you feel alive. If they don't, you feel abandoned. If they return, you feel chosen. If they withdraw, you feel rejected. But when you say no, you untether yourself. Their actions no longer dictate your worth. Their silence no longer defines your value. Their begging no longer determines your next move. And that's when something profound happens. You begin to see that the love you've been fighting for isn't the love you even want anymore. Because deep down, you don't want to decode mixed signals. You don't want to beg for breadcrumbs. You don't want to play detective with someone's heart. What you want is alignment. A love that feels steady, secure, nourishing, and real. When you stop reacting to them, you start creating you. And this is where your energy becomes magnetic again. People often ask me, Megan, how do I attract healthier love? And my answer is always the same. You don't chase it, you create it. You create it by becoming the woman who no longer entertains confusion. You create it by aligning your standards with your actions. You create it by saying no to the chaos and yes to the peace you've been starving for. So the fifth shift is simple but not easy. Stop reacting, start creating. Because when you shift from decoding them to designing you, you don't just end the cycle, you rewrite it completely. The sixth shift is realizing that walking away is not the end of love. It is the beginning of real love. For so long, you've been conditioned to believe that letting go means losing everything. That if you don't hold on, you'll be left with nothing. But here's the truth. When you let go of the avoidant, you don't end love. You end the illusion, you end the scarcity. You end the starvation of chasing someone who was never willing to feed you fully. And what's left in that space? A love that finally has room to breathe. A love that isn't about begging, proving, or shrinking yourself small just to fit into someone else's fears. It's a love that begins with you, the kind of love that doesn't collapse when someone withdraws, because it's no longer dependent on them. Here's the deeper reality. Avoidants beg because they fear losing control. But when you stop going back, you reveal that you were never under their control in the first place. You were always free. You just forgot. And the moment you remember, everything changes. Because freedom is magnetic. When you embody it, you draw in connections that mirror it. You attract people who don't run from closeness, but who meet you in it. People who don't just beg for your presence when they feel your absence, but who cherish you consistently without condition. And I want you to feel this in your bones. Saying no is not about punishing them. It's not about revenge. It's about choosing yourself so fully that their begging no longer moves you. It's about stepping into a version of you that no longer sees their return as validation, but as confirmation of how far you've grown. So here's the final truth I want to leave you with. When the avoidant begs for your love, don't see it as a moment to go back. See it as a mirror reflecting just how powerful you've become, just how unshakable your worth now is, and just how ready you are to step into a love that doesn't demand you abandon yourself to keep it. And when you choose that, when you choose you, the begging no longer matters. Because the love you've been searching for isn't behind you, it's ahead of you.